Welcome, everybody, to Virtual Bridge Workshop 2, Connecting with Newcomers Online, How Can AI Help? My name's Marco, and I'll be your session moderator today. Like all of you here who joined us from Canada, my home is on Native land. In Toronto, I live, work, and raise my children on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. And I encourage you to find out which nations exist and have existed on the land you call your home and where you work. In our sector, we have some specific responsibilities when it comes to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, which provides two specific calls to action related to our work with newcomers. The first was to add language to the Oath of Citizenship acknowledging Aboriginal and treaty rights of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, and this has been done. The other is for the government to revise the information kit for newcomers to Canada and the citizenship test to reflect a more inclusive history of the diverse Aboriginal peoples of Canada, including information about treaties and the history of residential schools. This is still a work in progress by the government. However, the sector has been active on this. There are a number of excellent resources created by immigrants and refugee serving organizations that you can use to have these conversations in your organizations and with newcomers. I'll share a link in the chat. And I encourage you to look at the toolkits, videos, language curriculum, and modules that you can use now in your work to have these conversations. On to the seminar, some quick logistics. Everyone will present. The current plan is that everyone will present and we'll have a Q&A at the end of all the sessions, but we'll have some flexibility. If there's a lot of interesting questions for a particular presenter, we may pause and ask a few of them after they present instead of waiting to the end to keep the flow going. The chat is open for you to interact with each other, to make comments, to share insights, etc. But please also use the chat to ask questions for presenters that we will use in the Q&A portion. This session is being recorded to be shared publicly. If you have your video on when no one is sharing a screen, such as now when the group view is showing, it will show up in the recording. Today presenting, we have Amy Holmes from Access Employment, who will discuss incorporating AI in your stakeholder engagement strategy. Wasim Jawad from Jumpstart Refugee Talent, who will discuss use of AI in interview preparation, and John Allen from New Language Solutions, who will discuss using AI to create learning events, challenges, and successes. And now over to our presenters, who will more fully introduce themselves and share their presentations with you. Amy, you're up first. Welcome, and go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, all good.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I thought yesterday's session was excellent, and I'm really looking forward to learning more today from the other presenters. And I'm honored to have the opportunity to share a bit more about how Access Employment is using AI currently. So a little background about Access. We have been offering services for 35 years or more than 35 years now. We are primarily an employment services organization. We operate in the GTA, but we also have a robust pre-arrival program suite as well. And our goal is to support people who are facing barriers to employment, to gaining meaningful employment, and working towards a fully diverse and inclusive workforce. So a few years back, we identified an issue that we were facing in our organization. Over time, we had really grown in the number of programs that we offer, and now we're up to over 30. And we were finding that while we had significant resources for clients who were in programming, there were bottlenecks at the initial point of contact with our organization. So people who were just learning about our organization and wanting to know more about the services that we offer, as well as having questions around, what are your hours? What are your locations? What are the eligibility criteria and whatnot? And so this bottleneck at that outset of service was something that we wanted to address, as well as being able to support individuals who may be returning for service. So in the slide that I'm showing you now, the stars represent where we have the concentration of our staff, and you can see both at that initial interaction and towards the the end of service, we have less staff resources, and so we wanted something to help us try to address that issue. So we were successful in securing funding from Accenture, a global grant, to build an AI-based chatbot. We affectionately named her Vera, which stands for Virtual Employment and Resource Attendant. And this chatbot sits on our website. Also, if individuals interact with our Facebook Messenger app, they are responded to by the same chatbot. Through the Accenture grant, we built the chatbot. It took us over a year and a half, and that included time to scope out what we wanted to build, to look at different technology options, to make a selection, which we went for IBM Watson and IBM Watson Discovery technology, and then also to build the chatbot. So that process, like I said, took about a year and a half. We had a soft launch in the fall of 2020, and in January of 2021, we did a public launch. So we've got about 2.5 years now of experience having this assistant on our website, and I'll be able to share some statistics with you today about how it's going. I also wanted to mention that in 2021, so about a year after we had the public launch, we were able to secure 2.25 years of IRCC funding. So that's continuing through March of 2024. And this SDI project is helping us examine the role that AI can play in settlement services with a focus on the initial point of contact or those initial interactions with the client and compare them against more traditional modes. So somebody calling, somebody walking in, somebody emailing our general information address. And our IRCC funding is also supporting us to make some enhancements to our chatbot, which I will discuss in the presentation as well. So we knew from the get-go what some of the problems were that we were facing and how we wanted this particular solution to address those. So first and foremost, we knew that we wanted Vera to be able to provide information about our programs and our services. As I mentioned before, we've got pre-arrival programs, so we knew we had people from all over the world living in different time zones, or even individuals who might be working in survival jobs locally and not be able to contact us during the regular 9 to 5 hours. So we wanted something that could address people and give them the information that they needed, improve access to information outside of our typical working hours, and to be able to address some of those questions about what do we offer and what are the eligibility criteria. We also knew that we wanted it to be able to surface information that we already had on our website around resume tips, templates, mock interview tips, and other resources, articles, videos that we had. And through our IRCC project, we also have been working collaboratively with Catholic Cross-Cultural Services and OCASI to expand Vera's knowledge into settlement information as well. And finally, we wanted to give people the ability to self-register for upcoming events that we're offering. So they were already able to do that through our website, but we wanted some more targeted suggestions of events that they might want to attend based on the conversation that they were having with Vera. So I'll show you an example in a moment where somebody asks about interview skills, and then Vera says, you know, here's some information about interview skills. We might also have on this topic that that might be interested in. Would you like to see the details and to register? So these are typical types of inquiries that people would have when they first contact us for information. So we have been tracking every month how many conversations the chatbot has. And honestly speaking, I think it was really good that we launched during COVID in a way, because I think people were perhaps more open to gathering information online, not being able to come into one of our offices as easily, and perhaps they were more open to this type of technology. So we see on average, we've got about 3,000 conversations a month that happen with the chatbot. It could be unique users, or it could be some people returning. There isn't a way for us to track if somebody's coming back to speak with the chatbot again. However, by and large, they tend to be, you know, one time, because they've either gotten the information that they were looking for, or we've directed them to a particular call to action, which I'll also get to. And that number of conversations per month has steadily been increasing as well. In our first year, that was about 1,200 a month, 1,800 a month. So it's almost doubled. And the top 5 topics or things that people converse with Vera about are, probably not surprisingly, our program list. And a little bit further down the line, or the list there, is around program eligibility, also event registration, information about building job search skills, and finally about our location or locations. We also have a custom version of Vera that we've been able to place on program landing pages. So let's say, for example, somebody doesn't interact with Vera when they first come on the website, but they've navigated their way to one of our program pages. So, I've got an example here of one of our inland programs, digital marketing connections. And so a custom version of Vera pops up automatically on the screen as I see you're interested in this particular program, and then offers a series of calls to action. So the person might want to find out about, might they be eligible for this program? Or they might want to register for one of our information sessions, because that's typically what we suggest to clients when they've contacted us and they're interested in a program. We say, well, come to the information session about, to find out more. Or maybe they just want to contact the program team to ask some questions. So we streamlined the Vera conversation to bring them right to the things that they would probably be most interested in doing or knowing. We've also been able to customize what this custom version of Vera says, depending on the program. So to contrast with the inland program that I just mentioned, for one of our pre-arrival programs, given the high volume of clients that they work with, it doesn't make as much sense for them to be filling out, a simple contact form and staff to contact them back. Our staff just wouldn't have the time to do that kind of volume. So in this case, we offer them the ability to fill out a registration form for the program instead, which allows our staff to have more information, be able to make a determination in terms of eligibility. We've also created a custom version for one of our specific demographics. So this is a program that is specific to helping people who have lived refugee experience. And in this case, the I want help finding a job again leads them to that particular program's registration form to be able to collect more information from them. So we're able to customize the wording, the options, and the order of the options depending on the needs of the program. So as probably many of you are familiar with, chatbots often operate with menu options. So, these are typical things that people might be interested in. And so we offer that too. And a lot of people do end up going through our guided menu. However, we also have the opportunity for people to put in their own message. So in this case, somebody might ask, how can I prepare for an interview? And Vera then looks for the information to the answer to that question and provides a response. So you might be wondering, well, how does she know, how to interpret that response? So the IBM Watson technology uses natural language processing, and this is really why we call it an AI-powered chatbot, because it uses AI to interpret the language that somebody has put in, the wording. It looks for keywords, it looks for phrasing and whatnot. And over time, it continues to improve its ability to understand typical inquiries, and it builds a library of the different ways that people may ask for the same information. And then here you can see it provides a bit of a response, and it also offers them the ability to register for a workshop on the topic. Another thing that Vera can do through Watson Discovery is it can surface information. So if they ask about resume skills, for example, it may also point them to resources that we have on our website around, a webinar on the topic or something like that. So it's basically like a search engine. It can look for information, but we have controlled where it looks. So, we've put some constraints on the sources that it's going to look to. As well with the natural language processing, as it interprets the question and provides a response, it's not generative AI. So it's not composing those responses on the fly. We have composed those responses in advance. And so there's a finite number of responses that are available for Vera to provide. So it's not going to go rogue, for example, or provide information that we haven't already vetted. So on a monthly basis, we look at the types of inquiries that have come in, and we make improvements if Vera was inaccurate. Another thing people can do is they can choose a menu option, as I'm showing you here, and then they're able to drill down into more information about that program. So for example, if they say, find out which programs are right for me, we then ask them a standard set of questions, and based on their answers, we cross-reference that against our program eligibility in real time and provide the person with a list of programs that they're eligible for. The way that this works is we've got an integration between Vera and our Salesforce-based CRM. So it looks at all of the programs in our Salesforce system. we've put in the eligibility criteria in advance, and it cross-references that way. Sometimes people know the program that they're interested in, so they might ask about that. In this case, we ask them a few questions. Those questions have been selected by our program teams because those are the things that they say they need to know. And then we just share that information. So it's not screening anybody out, it's just collecting the information. Also, if somebody registers for one of our events, you can see here it offers them the ability to register. So if they filled out a form or they've registered for an event, then it will create a new record for that individual in our system. Or if they already have a record, it's going to add their inquiry to their existing record. A key metric for us is how many people, who have taken one of these actions then become one of our clients. And we've got a really strong conversion rate of about a quarter of the people that fill out a form or register for an event on Vera have gone on to become our clients. And this rate has really remained consistent over time. As well, 12% of all of the new clients that we've had within the first 2 years of Vera being live have come through Vera. So I'll say that again. In the first 2 years, any new clients, looking at the composition, 12% of those people came in through Vera, meaning their first interaction with our organization was through the chatbot. So we really see this as an effective additional doorway to service. Another stakeholder group that we engage through Vera is our staff. So right from the get-go, we wanted to know from them, what kinds of things should Vera do? What, routine inquiries can they field and whatnot? And then what should Vera say? So what are the questions people have, and how do you typically respond to them, so that Vera's language, the way she responds to the questions, is very similar to how our staff would present that information as well. And also identifying which points in that conversation it makes sense to hand off that inquiry to a person. And then also training staff on how to find the inquiries in the system. It's the same database that they use to find inquiries through the traditional phone, email, walk-in channels. So it's all in the same place, it's just a different door. And finally, we work really hard with our programs to check in, find out how things are going, evolve. So an example is recently we added settlement questions to Vera. So when they fill out a form, we say, do you also have needs about housing or language assessment or mental health issues? So we can capture that information at the initial point, so that in that first conversation with our staff team, they're aware of some of those parallel needs and can make referrals. Overall, looking at the impact on a staff side, it's significant. So an estimated 7,400 hours of staff time are saved every year by Vera responding to these inquiries, helping people register for an event, and providing information. And that could be upwards of 4 staff positions that are saved as a result of that. And it gives staff time back in their day to do the things that they're really good at and that brought them into this work in the beginning: training, coaching, building relationships, and helping people upskill. We also have a menu for employers who might interact with Vera and are looking to hire or sponsor or volunteer with us. And the final stakeholder group that I'll mention is current clients and alumni. So these are people that might be interested in another program. So they've already completed something with us, or they're in service in some way, but they also want to do something else. So we also cater to that audience as well. So I think I'm almost up with time. So this is my last slide. Some of you might be wondering a little bit about, like, how do you do this? What's required to run this? So we do maintain a subscription every month, every year, for the Watson Assistant technology and discovery. We have an internal team that works on Vera. This comes through the IRCC funding currently, a manager and a coordinator and somebody on our IT side. We also work with an external vendor to help us execute more complicated changes in Vera, and acts as an intermediary with IBM. And finally, we spend a lot of time ensuring that there's good inter-system operability. As I mentioned, this sits on our website, so we need to make sure that it's working on our website. We're going through a website redesign now, and this will, obviously be a key piece in making sure that that works on the new website too, as well as functioning properly on our Facebook Messenger and interacts according to how we want to receive those inquiries, and also pull information out of our Salesforce system to be able to display upcoming events and allow people to register. And before I finally finish, I just wanted to shout out Anjali. She is our Vera program manager. She does an incredible job, and I think she joined. There she is. She's waving as well. So thanks, to Anjali as well.
Thanks, Amy, for that great presentation. There's a couple of quick questions I just want to throw at you before we move on to the next presenter. So one is, does Vera provide information in both official languages or English only?
Very good question. Just recently, Anjali spearheaded a response in French, our very first French response, but generally Vera only offers information in English. But for the French response does direct Vera to our French team and to what services we offer in French, but we do receive a fair number of inquiries in other languages. So something that we have identified the need to do is if we receive an inquiry in another language, we have to have a response to be able to, direct people to come into one of our sites or to call us because our staff may be able to speak that language.
And another quick question related to cost. How much is the IBM subscription, and do they have a nonprofit rate for the AI you're using?
Yeah, good question about the not-for-profit rate. I'm not sure if we're paying a not-for-profit rate or not. But Anjali, is it about 25K a year?
Yeah, it's around 25,000, and it's really dependent on the
Right.
usage. So when you're starting out, it would be less, but for us, because we've been operating for 2 years and the numbers are increasing, we're finding that amount is going up every month. I just wanted to add a quick little bit about the French piece. I was really surprised because I found Watson to be quite capable, and once we added in the French response, it was actually in French. And so there's some keywords that Vera actually does notice as French, and she can separate it from English. So even though we don't have a formal French language sort of service, Watson is quite capable and able to kind of help us integrate that.
And currently, a follow-up question, you're getting that money from IRCC, I assume,
That's
to
right.
cover the cost.
Yeah.
And I think an important point for all technology, but in particular with AI, because of these kinds of subscription models, the more successful you are, the costlier it'll actually become over time. And that's important if there's any funders listening when they think about how to invest in this kind of technology, right?
Yeah, for sure. And there's also a practice in terms of how we manage the project. We're also looking at, transparent billing from from IBM side. So we want to understand really like where those costs are coming from, and so that we can manage them and, make efficiencies if we need to in order to manage that cost.
Yeah, which I would say is a whole other skill that agencies need to think about is contract and external consultant management when it comes to things that you may not think you understand from a technology perspective, but need to understand from a relationship, a contractual perspective. So thank you, Amy, very much for that presentation. I'm going to pass it over to Wasim now, who will talk about Jumpstart Refugee Talent's use of AI in interview preparation. So Wasim, over to you.
Thank you, Marco, and hello, everyone. Great, Amy, for the great work you're doing there at Access. So let me share my screen quickly. So Jumpstart is a nonprofit organization that support refugees to find a meaningful job and start their own business in the entrepreneurship programs as well. And I'm managing the program development and the entrepreneurship programs at Jumpstart. We have around 30 members in our team spread over Canada, and we're serving around 2,000 clients in Canada and overseas. And we usually go through a specific process when we are adopting any kind of technology or system at Jumpstart. We usually go with the diagnostic, the problems that we have or the challenges in our programs. Then we try to design a solution or the tools that we want to use. Then we go through the implementation and testing the tool, and at the end we evaluate and try to deploy the process again if needed. One of the programs which I want to give you, let's say, or to present the tools for is a EMPP, Economic Mobility Pathway Pilot. This program is targeting talent refugees who are planning to come to Canada through, let's say, government pathways. And we prepare them overseas while they're preparing themselves to come to Canada. We are trying to support them to find a job, to connect them with the employers, and prepare them for the interviews, for onboarding activities, and all the process of the employment here in Canada. So by doing this, our small team, and we have some members now, we're bringing them overseas as well, trying to serve a huge number of clients from in the worldwide. So we have many challenges specifically in this program. We have a limited capacity and resources to serve those clients. So our mentor pool is a little bit limited, and the subject matter experts serving in all the sectors are limited as well. So we are trying to focus on the, let's say, how to make it an agile and selective process to provide specific clients with the right resource there in the right level. We have a problem with accessibility. As Amy mentioned, we have different time zones clients coming from different time zones, and we need to provide an accessible tools for everybody in Asia, in Africa, and in Europe, and in Latin America. We want to be customized, so we have different pathways. Mainly now we are focusing in the tech and healthcare sectors, and we need the tools that give a general understanding and answers for as many sectors as we can. And at the end also, we have, let's say, an eligibility criteria to match or to provide mentorship. So we want our clients to reach a certain level of understanding the process, the employment, what kind of questions, general questions, and prepare them to come and to ask the right questions to our mentors and the experts. In addition, we want to build this self-confidence within our clients. Most of the time, our clients will be hesitant to say that, okay, I don't know how to answer this. I don't know how to reflect or speak about my accomplishments, my achievements. So we want them to practice and to be prepared for such questions. So let me let me share now a tool and do a small demo there for the tool. So we come up with the Career Development Hub at Jumpstart, where we bring all the resources and tools in this platform. One of it is the AI tool, which I will provide now, which I will demo now. And this Development Hub will give access for all the stakeholders to provide resources, self-training materials, and in addition, these self-training tools built on AI. Presenting now this AI tool. Hope you can see my screen.
Yeah, we can see it.
Perfect. So this AI tool is, you can see it as if a general consultant or a job consultant, which provide a preparation for any kind of interviews. We are trying now to build also customized persona based on sectors or positions, job positions later on. Actually, we didn't put a name for this consultant yet, but we are in the process there. So those personas will be providing specific answers per sectors. But for this one, it's a general interview prep. So I will maybe now try to ask questions for it, just to demo how our clients are now using it. Okay. Hi. Hello. There might be a latency there.
Wasim, if you're trying to use your audio with the
Yes.
AI, the problem is that your audio is being used for Zoom, so I don't think it can be shared.
Oh, we tested.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was working properly.
Okay.
Yeah,
My apologies.
Just a sec. Let me restart it, maybe. Okay, here we go. Hi. Yeah, just a sec. Enable audio. Hello.
Hey there, how can I assist you today?
So I'm applying for a business development manager at a bank, and I want to know how to answer or how to prepare for the interview.
That's great, Wasim. The position of a business development manager at a bank can be quite competitive, but with the right preparation, you can definitely shine in your interview. To start off, it's crucial to thoroughly research the bank you're applying to. Familiarize yourself with their mission, values, and recent achievements. This will not only show your enthusiasm, but also demonstrate that you've taken the time to understand the organization.
Perfect. So what kind of questions should I expect?
The million-dollar question. Well, as a business development manager, you can expect a mix of behavioral and situational questions. They'll want to assess your skills, experience, and how you handle different scenarios. Here are a few examples. 1. Tell me about your experience in this field. 2. What do you consider to be your greatest strengths and weaknesses? 3. Can you describe a time when you had to handle a difficult situation in the workplace? 4. How do you handle stress and pressure on the job?
So can you help me to know how to answer the fourth questions, how to handle stress and pressure on the job? What does that mean?
Handling stress and pressure on the job is indeed a crucial skill. It means being able to stay calm and composed even in challenging situations. One way to approach this is by demonstrating your ability to prioritize tasks, manage your time effectively, and maintain a positive mindset. Employers want to see that you can navigate high-pressure environments without letting it impact your performance or well-being.
Can you test now my question or my answers, please?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to help you practice. Go ahead and give me an example of how you would answer one of the questions, and I'll provide feedback and suggestions. Let's make sure you're fully prepared for your interview.
Okay, so stop here. So by doing that, as you can see, it's show that clients can interact, ask their questions, maybe clarify certain skills or certain questions, how to prepare for their answers. And from the back end, we collect those questions and answers, and usually we analyze the top questions asked per sector, per job interview, per job post, excuse me. And then when we have the actual one-to-one sessions, we will highlight on those strengths and weakness of the clients. And we have more tailored, let's say, services to them and make more efficient interview prep sessions, live sessions. But the crucial things here is that to prepare our teams to use these tools, understand those kind of trends, questions, and answers. The other thing is to give our clients the let's say the confidence that they can ask whatever they want. We are collecting their data for their own, let's say, sake, and to prepare, to help them to prepare for their interviews. By analyzing this, we figured out that we need also to bring English training courses. We are now preparing tools to support in the English training. But we will do in another approach. We will bring a live sessions or group sessions, and we'll provide an AI tools, and we will compare the outcome of each technologies, let's say, either the platform for the training, self-training and the live sessions, or the AI tools, and then we will compare which is the best tool to implement it later on for our clients. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wasim. Super interesting. One quick question, which I think you answered, but is you're able to download the responses provided, the entire chat at the end of the conversation, right? And that's what you're analyzing as you're describing. Is that right?
Correct. We generate all the questions and answers will be provided for the clients, so he can review it and go through it on a side. And also we will provide it as a log for our system to analyze the top topics and the top questions, the pros and cons for each of these posts, let's say, and clients.
Thank you. And it hasn't been asked yet, but I feel like I have to. What tool are you using for this, and how did you choose that tool?
We're developing actually this tool with some of the third party, some of the freelancers overseas. We implement it in our career development hub, which is a training hub for our clients. And I think it's based on the Unity. I think this is the technology that's built on.
Great. So it's actually an internal development that you're working on.
Yes.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to hand it over now to and as I said, please continue posting your questions in the chat, and we'll get to those at the end as well. But thank you so much, Wasim, for that information. Really cool. I'm going to move it on to John Allen now from New Language Solutions, who will discuss using AI to create learning events, challenges, and successes. So please, John, unmute, start sharing. It's over to you.
Thanks, Marco. Hello, everybody. Can you see the screen? Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to try to jam this in as best I can. I'm going to be talking about using AI to create learning events, the challenges and successes. This is based on a lot of interactions with my peers across the country. I'm going to focus really on the development side of not get into too many technical details. So to describe the whole process here, I want to look at the business model, Gartner's hype cycle. Its purpose is to assess the potential of emerging technologies. In our case, it provides a framework for understanding the various stages in technology adoption and provides information into where energy and time should be applied or avoided. Saves a lot of headaches. So if we're looking at this, you can see there's a technology trigger at the beginning of the graph, and that happened in November 2022 when ChatGPT was released, essentially the biggest generative tool out there. The peak of inflated expectations was hit a few months later. That could be followed by the trough of disillusionment, which I'll talk about mine, and potentially sliding up the slope of enlightenment to get to the plateau of productivity. I think a lot of people are all over on this. I don't think anybody's at the plateau of productivity yet with this tool, but possibly they are. So during the peak of inflated expectations, I was at the TESOL International Conference in the States. Most of the sessions had possibly 12 to 30 people. So there wasn't a lot of people there because it was in Oregon, I guess. But they called an impromptu session on ChatGPT, and over 200 people, they stopped clicking to count at 200. The hallways were full. It was unbelievable. So there was a lot of interest during the hype. In March, I compiled this list with by myself to start going through things, and I got very overwhelmed, as a lot of us possibly are. Also during the peak, and even now, if you go to YouTube, you'll see things like this. It will change your life. Learn any skill you want. And even Russell Standard, I'm a big fan of Russell. He had a video out 6 months ago, study languages with ChatGPT. So there's a lot of things out there. During the peak, there are all sorts of claims, and a lot of them are true. And as language teachers and developers and managers, we understand that a lot of these could have potential positive things for us. But then I fell off the peak, and I slid into the trough of disillusionment. And three examples of this are through reading media online or anywhere, even in my magazines I buy. I've done about 16 professional development events related to ChatGPT with mostly the link sector across Canada, and the feedback I got, and while I was developing for New Language Solutions, discovering limitations while adopting it into development practice. So in the media, even the CEO of OpenAI is nervous about what the technology does and actually admits that they don't exactly know how it works. So that scares you. It's scary. And even Professor, I can't remember his name right. The professor from Montreal went to the US Congress to push to pass legislation. So even at the high levels, there's a bit of a controversy here. And then you go online and you read. Now, this is just recently from Penn University. You can train professors to easily spot AI versus human text. But then you read in the same month that OpenAI, the company that makes ChatGPT, quietly shuts down its detection tool, and it admits it can't detect what is human or what is machine generated by itself. So that's kind of scary. To further this, I've been doing a lot of PD events across Canada, post blogs, and I get feedback. And in my professional learning network, or PLN, I get a lot of discussion and feedback. And a lot of people are very confused, and a lot of things don't work. And there are successes, but a lot of things are not as seamless and as euphoric, utopian, I guess you could say, as we expected. So when you get into ChatGPT, one of the things that's really, you probably trip across right away, is the knowledge limited based on its training. And as you can see, the language model itself for ChatGPT was only trained up until 2021. There are ways to get around this, but the average person just goes and feels, a little bit of a bump from that. So there's also stereotypes built in because humans feed the language model itself. So there's potential bias in answers, and that's a problem. So if you want to put students on a task, that might seep in. And then also, if you want to do independent learning paths or modules with students, the ChatGPT cannot really identify if they're struggling, if it's something that's beyond just like scores out of 10. Also, you discover the hallucinations in just strange ways. There's a hallucination of factually incorrect answers. Like, for example, if you type in, what's the capital of Italy? Some people reported that they got the capital of Italy is Venice. That can be changed by a thumbs down and then providing more advice to the ChatGPT. That's a lot of work. And then there's all sorts of issues there. There are more hallucinations, like nonsensical answers, unrelated answers, invented events or people, and inaccurate or invented citations. My daughter was finishing up her degree in politics, and a lot of, when she went to ChatGPT, she was given a lot of non-existent citations. That was kind of interesting to look through. So while I was developing with some of my peers, adopting ChatGPT into my development practice, we have a fresh opportunity, and I felt so good about this. It's called Can Avenue. It will be launched next September 2024. It's similar to Avenue, but it will be open to essentially the world. We tried a couple of things, a personal generative chat partner, and then we are actually in the process of creating extensive readers and extensive listening in a library, which are very exciting, but we used ChatGPT to kick us off here. And this led to some success, but disappointment, frustration, and feeling very foolish. And I should feel foolish because I was around when the internet came out. It was going to change everything. MOOCs were going to change education. Smartphones, bring your own device and all that stuff was going to change it. And we're all going to be happy and the world will be easy and education will be easy. So in the trough of disillusionment, we have to make a decision, a personal decision, professional decision, I guess, based on the policy of your institution. You can abandon the AI language models, or you can start up the slope of enlightenment. So I have no choice. So I'm going up the slope of enlightenment, and there are all sorts of potential development opportunities. It does all sorts of things really well. You can do all sorts of amazing things really well. It actually does. I'm really a champion, I feel, of accessibility and examples of opportunities for people with visual impairments. There's an app called Be My Eyes that can describe everything in front and around them while folks are walking through the streets or through buildings. There's also the API, application programming interface, that allows ChatGPT to communicate with existing apps or new apps, such as Quizlet, Duolingo, and Grammarly, to enhance their functionality. There's also ample assistance out on the web and through social media, like LinkedIn and all of those. So there's cheat sheets, there's charts, there's all sorts of great things. There's amazing stuff on YouTube, but you've got to be careful. There's also the marketplace phenomenon, where it's sort of like a stock market for getting pre-made prompts, or folks will, like Fiverr, you give them a request and they will go out and create a prompt for you and sell it to you. So these are out there, these new marketplaces. There are, I know there were a ton, but there are so many more education tools being built with the generative tools. So it's up to 100. My current list that I'm favoriting is it's got 164 tools. There's social, your professional learning network. I actually I'm on one on Facebook. So there's a lot of opportunity out there. I'm a member of ISTE, the International Society of Technology and Education, and I'm really impressed that they're pushing out their stuff for free. And so there's a lot of guides for you there, and there's a lot of hands-on guides. These are crazy amazing. The one in the visual on the right, sponsored by General Motors, has been going on for years, and they've adapted it to the current situation. So there's a lot of things out there for you. So while we're going up the slope of enlightenment, I have I've identified some challenges here. I'm using Moodle as the learning management system, and while we were developing, we have to really be careful of privacy safeguarding for our students and for our instructors. That's a really, we can make some things happen, but when we sit back and think, oh my goodness, what are we going to do about privacy? We don't really know what these language models are collecting. So we have to really be careful of that. That's a big roadblock. And also custom scripting. We have expertise, but we don't have a lot of expertise with that, and a lot of time for that. So that's also a very big challenge to integrate some of these tools within our system. So we're still working that out. While developing original content and materials, we have to identify the practical and successful structures that will work. So if we try to write like a book from one prompt, it doesn't work. If you want to do an extensive reading book, it's impossible. You can do it, but it will get torn apart by the CLB experts. So we have to reduce it to what does work. We found that glossary lists, definitions, and outlines, and there's other things that we had, and they work well. And we have to share that with each other. And then you have to identify effective prompts, save them, and share them within your team, and maybe even to the community. Prompts are really big here. Trusting generative AI language levels, saying that they're going to generate CLB4, say, it's not exact. And even the CEFR is better, but it's still fuzzy. You need a lot of refinement. Prompting for lower levels dramatically reduces the text length, which kind of it's correct, of course, but sometimes it's dramatic and useless. It makes the final project useless. You really have to understand that human refinement work is required. You need to be better at prompting and persistent at prompting, and just everything that you produce generally needs, unless it's a list or unless it's a list, you really are going to have to work on it. So it's going to save you some time possibly and give you some alternate content, but it's not going to make your workload low or reduce your workload a ton. So possible remedies to AI challenges: update institutional and organizational policies. I see that is still in process at most institutions across Canada. Teacher training, It's going to be a big one. A lot of folks out there don't really know how to start. They know how to start, but they've just scratched the surface. That's got to be a management kind of push to identify what you have to do and provide it for the instructors. Actively teaching students and educators ethics of using AI tools. I am drawing from ISTE's digital citizenship publications on that. Integrate AI tools into lessons and share the experience. You should encourage your teachers to do that if they can, if they have the time. Use AI chat detectors with caution because they're not fail-safe for sure. And the extreme is just banning AI in schools. So the applications programming interface, what it does is it adds functionality to existing tools or apps. The one we were trying was the new Moodle OpenAI block, to some success, it does work. However, there's all sorts of implications with this. I can't go, that's a whole webinar. And then there's an app we adopted called Rashi.ai. It's produced in Vancouver. It does generate YouTube lessons from, it generates lessons from web documents, YouTube pages, YouTube videos, and it does a lot more than that. But, and it also does the miracle of pushing it out in an H5P course presentation, which is insane, it's amazing. And then because I'm quite good at H5P, so I can go in there and customize it a bit and move things around, and then I've got it. But then when you look at the content, it all goes back to ChatGPT. So you have to be careful and make sure you refine the results. But it's a really good tool to look into. So we have to change our practices, and an example is go back to paper exams and handwritten essays, because you can't, I don't think it's possible anymore to hand out a report assignment or an essay assignment and then have your students go away and send it to you via email. That's impossible. And some of this, if you can test your students or assess your students in more meaningful ways. My personal experiences when I taught in Qatar for a block, my last 7-year block, I taught in the English language department, and we had our students write their formative assessments and their exams, pencil, paper, eraser, no mobile devices present. And we found that because we had to do that, we were teaching without technology for our writing skill, and our students really benefited from it. So it can be done, but it takes a lot of work, a lot of energy. And remember, you're the expert in charge. Your instructors are the expert in charge. Work with each other and work within yourself to potentially get up the slope and using the products and using generative AI to help you and enhance your teaching. And that's it.
Thank you so much, John. Fantastic amount of information. And I'm going to invite everyone to continue posting into the chat for the Q&A, but I'm going to start with a few questions. And the first is to you, John, which is on the slope of enlightenment. As you're talking, I see it's also a slope of overload, learning, and potential decision paralysis because of not only the number of options that are out there, the implications of those choices, but also the constant evolution of technology. So you work predominantly in the language side of the sector, and beyond Avenue's own work, I wonder, you've given some good insights about, it's going to take work. There's policy shifts. There's, just getting educated on this. How do you see that slope of learning rolling out in the language side of the sector currently and in the future for organizations to be able to make really effective choices about technology and AI in particular?
I think, well, this is actually a professional, personal thing I've been doing since February. I've been writing, I've written an article, it's not published yet, but blogging, doing face-to-face, doing webinars, doing open, like at Tesla Ontario did an open session where people just ask me questions. And it's kind of the same thing, like you're saying. It feels like it's impossible to move forward with this. But what we have to do is we have to keep on sharing and learning from each other. you learn so much just by getting people's experience and working on my team as well. We talk easily once or twice a week about what worked, what didn't work. But in the sector itself, I think organizations like TESOL Ontario and BC Teal and ATESOL, they are actually they're actually grasping this, and they are putting up a lot of resources. As Marco, as are you. I see your website. I can call it your website, right? Your resource.
You can.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, there are great things out there. You have to find them, identify them, and work with them. You know, and also, I don't think the average instructor out there has near enough time to experiment with this stuff. So they have to actually sort of be handed a menu or a palette of things and be provided those by their institutions. Like, for example, if you want to use ChatGPT, you can use it for free, but because of the hiccups that happen in terms of access, I do recommend that every instructor should get their own account. And I never use version 4. I only use 3.5, just because I never get a timed out, or I don't get usage limits and all that. So I don't know, supporting the instructors, going out there and just learning together, and remembering that we're all in it together, and don't be institution centric. Like, if you learn things, push it out there, because others are doing that as well. But I think it's got a long road ahead.
For sure, but that's a great checklist, is that we need some leadership from the existing leaders in the sector. So you're mentioning TESOL, you know, the provincial as well as the national. We've got umbrella organizations. We've got some national institutions on the settlement side. You know, you also are talking about folks like yourself. I consider myself more of a lone wolf because I'm a consultant, but your organization, you've got ESL teachers right in there. So as an organization that is essentially a technology assistance or support to them, you're taking that role on, which makes sense. And we don't really have that on the settlement side of the sector. And then there is individuals as well as individual organizations who need to figure out how to take this on, how to build in time for it, and then to share it back out, which is what, you know, yesterday and today have been all about. And these are bite-sized versions of the kind of sharing that we need to see more of. And we can just see from the reactions in the chat, for example. But that's a great sort of starting point of like a roadmap of how we need to go about doing this and support the sectors. And I want to ask, before I dive back into the chat, a thread that I'm hearing from all of you is the human side of this, right? The AI, the implementation of AI tools, and let's just call them tools, requires human work. It's about engagement with the workers who are doing the work, refinement, enhancement of the tools, understanding what the right approach is to use these tools. And that's a really strong theme when you're talking about using, looking at, or implementing. So I wonder, this is for all of you, if you can speak a bit to that aspect of how you've been working about implementing AI within your organization or sector, John, and how you also introduce its use to newcomers so that it's seen as a trusted assistant for staff who may be a bit paranoid given what we hear about the news of AI will replace you, and as a trusted channel for interaction with newcomers who are inundated with online scams constantly. So that's a big question, but really it's how do you make sure staff are comfortable and understand how to use this as a tool and not as a threat? And how do you ensure that the newcomers you're working with see this as a trusted source of information and a way to interact? So feel free to jump in, any one of you. Whoever unmutes first, I'll call on. No one? No one? Come on. Okay, Amy, I'm calling on you then.
I'm gonna, can I add? Oh, sorry. No.
Oh,
sorry.
Rania, go ahead.
No, I think it's a great question, Marco, but I was gonna chime in the chat, but I'll just say it now so that it doesn't come out weird. But I actually feel that most newcomers are much more prepared and open for AI now than most of our organizational processes and staff. And I think I feel that this is something we're not admitting enough in the sector, and it's something that we are not working forward towards more. We keep saying newcomers are not ready. I think they're ready because they use it in other contexts, but I think it's us that's not very ready to do it. I don't know.
So,
it's just a
yeah,
feeling.
So I wanted to say, Rania, because it's an interesting road. That is a sentiment that's real for technology in general. No one here is suggesting that that's the sentiment. But the reality is that when we introduce new technologies, there are trust factors. There are, am I interacting with a human? So we know the research shows, and for people who are wondering that, yes, newcomers are more further along the digital literacy path than most of us, but on smartphones, they're not digitally literate in some areas, and different segments of newcomer populations are less digitally literate than our organization. So it's not a one size fits all, but it is an important point to make that many newcomers will be ready for this. And in fact, many newcomers are getting these kinds of interactions or building these tools themselves, right? We saw that with Nick yesterday in yesterday's presentation, for example, newcomers serving newcomers, which in many ways is how Jumpstart started, for example. But we still are challenged within our organizations about how to implement these things, both as service tools, as well as for staff, as well as to ensure that newcomers understand this is good information. This is vetted, authoritative information. It's probably better than what you'll get for sure from ChatGPT, which has its, for lack of we're not going to call them hallucinations. We're going to call it misinformation. And I think I can make that point later. But Wasim, I'm going to stop talking so you can jump in.
Thank you, Marco. So actually, our approach is that the tools, or usually the solution, come from our team themselves. They test it. They see that these tools will help them within our mission or within our service that will be provided to our clients. So they will test it. They will approve about all the concept and the process of the outcome of this tool, and then we go in testing phase with selective clients, and then we publish these tools. So usually the tools coming to solve a problem either within our team or for an outcome that we are looking for within our program. We're not want to implement a tool just to go with an AI tool or to support or to implement it in our programs.
So the approach you're taking is the approach that you showed us at the beginning of your presentation. And I think that's important for people to realize. The same mindset and needs assessment and approaches, then critical approaches we take to any kind of new program need to be applied to AI, even if we feel like we don't understand the technology. So that's a really important foundational statement to say. Just apply what you know how to do and go through with your staff, right?
Absolutely. You will find now millions of tools coming with AI, and like from the video processing, image processing, language recognition. So all of these tools, it's coming daily. But how to implement it and get the best use within your team to provide your programs, this is the important.
No, that's great. And Amy, you actually answered a question in the chat that's similar to what Wasim is talking about. Your organization piloted or tested out an AI virtual interview tool and opted to go with another tool that is not AI, but is still a technology kind of approach that you've used in other ways as well. So you can maybe speak to that as a process as well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, we definitely hear about different tools over time. Either companies are reaching out to us directly, or a staff have heard something, or they've attended some event at another organization, and another organization is using something and they asked us to check it out. So my team is constantly checking out new tools and evaluating them against what we already have in place and where the value add may be or not be for our organization. I've seen a lot of tools over the last couple of years that seem to be trying to build a bit of a one size job or one stop. Anyways, I think you guys know what I'm trying to say, but like
one-stop
shop. Yeah, there it is.
There you go.
Thanks. That was trying to sort of cover off a lot of different needs. So not only interviewing skills, but also maybe helping them build a resume and then linking them off to local LMI resources and then pulling in job listings from Monster or whatever. So, I think each organization has to look at where the gaps may be and what they're currently able to offer and how this tool may be able to fill those gaps. And even though something, might be shiny or whatever, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a good fit. And also looking at, like people have said, sort of what's the appetite among the staff and sort of the capacity, and what are your priorities as well? What problems do you need to solve in that list? Like, what do you want to try to address first? We're so blessed at Access, honestly, that over time we've been able to build up a team of people that are able to test out these tools and to run pilots and see what the uptake is. Like, that's another approach we've done. We sort of said like, okay, well, we're not really sure we don't, on my team, we don't know enough to say at this point, like, yeah, this tool will be good or not. So why don't we, maybe buy a small subscription to it for a few months, or see if we can get something free for a little while and then test it out with a handful of programs and see what their response is and see what their clients say about it, and then use that information to help us make further decisions.
Yeah, thanks. And that kind of goes back to what you were saying, John, which is, we've got to put organizational resources and time, and Wasim and Amy are both speaking to having done that, working with staff, building in these pilots, but making time for that, which is a luxury that we feel for most organizations. But I think from a program investment perspective, and I'm talking about from funders as well, it's no longer a luxury. It's a necessity for us to be able to take that time and to build it into the way we do our work. Great. I'm going to go back to the chat because there's some great questions there. So thank you, everyone. Keep them coming. And again, this is for everybody. Having in mind that privacy is a challenge, what are your thoughts considering the tools presented today would be used by immigrants and refugees, some coming from countries of having a fear of authority and persecution, and therefore not necessarily comfortable providing information online? So privacy is something that we know. For example, people say with ChatGPT, do not share any information that you would not want to be shared because the tool is learning from that. So how are you all dealing with the challenge of privacy in this context?
I can start with that. So
Sure.
we usually give, let's say, guidance for our clients, what kind of information they can share within these tools, within our tools, automatic tools, and why we're taking those, if we are collecting any data, why we are using and where. So, for example, we don't, let's say, store any identifications or anything that identify those clients in our analyzing for the job posting or the trends or questions, analyzing the questions answers. But also we will tell them and advise them how to use these tools and what kind of information they should share and hide, for example.
Great. And in your case, Amy, you're collecting information through your AI tool. So what do you have in place for people to feel comfortable to share that information, to know that it's, being stored
that's right.
securely, things like that?
Yeah, good questions. So first of all, the user has a choice. So even though they've interacted with Vera, if they get, down the branch and then it's at the point in time in which they are being asked to provide information, Vera says, may I ask you some questions and, to help us better serve you? And if they say no, then they're offered at that point to be handed over to a person. It's not in real time, but it's like, visit one of our locations then, or you can call this number during office hours or whatever, if that would be their preference. So they definitely have that option. If they do proceed in submitting the form, we are gaining their consent in order to contact them back as part of that information capture. You raise a good point that we don't explicitly say within Vera, like where we're storing this information or whatever, but that's something that I've noted down because I do think that, that could help to build that sense of trust. Part of the reason why we chose the technology that we did is because it interfaces with Salesforce. So we knew the information would go into our secure database, and because it's stateless, which means that that information that's captured doesn't pass through, it doesn't get stored on IBM side. So we knew the information would only be stored in our own database. So that's, but nobody interacting with Vera would necessarily know that. So thanks. I'm glad this came up because maybe we can do something to improve it there.
Excellent. Always things to learn together.
Yep.
Absolutely. And in terms of similar to this, another question is, have any of you encountered any resistance from newcomer clients? Are they satisfied in the ability, Amy, in your case, of chatbots to respond to questions? Perhaps many may not see chatbot responses as credible enough or nuanced enough, credible or relevant enough, or maybe they interacted with Roger's chatbot and are disgusted at the ability of a chatbot to help them. Because we all have various other experiences with chatbots, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, honestly, when I first came into the role and I learned Vera was going to be a big part of it, I actually had a similar reaction. I'm like, I don't tend to use chatbots when I go to websites. So like, are people actually going to use this? And like, we were talking about today, the number of people using it just continues to go up. So I think we feel confident that the responses are reliable because we've written them. And so we know she can't say anything that we haven't already pre-programmed into that. But whether or not other people may find them credible is something that we don't always know. We've done a couple of things in Vera to try to improve our ability to assess that. So for example, now after somebody has submitted a form or registered for an event or received information about settlement, they are now asked, how helpful have I been? And then there's a scale that they can offer. So we're able to then sort of assess their satisfaction at the end of certain interactions and be nuanced to know, like, okay, well, 60% of people who register for events say they're very satisfied, but that number goes down to 40% when they've registered for program information or whatever. So we can sort of be a little bit more nuanced there. And what else? Well, the other thing to keep in mind too is that, if somebody gets the information that they're looking for, they may actually just close the chatbot because they got what they were looking for. So in those cases, we might not even know if it was successful or not. So that's why asking this sort of help question is our attempt to figure out, like, did we give you what you were looking for? I think another key metric for us is whether or not the person's getting that timely follow-ups, because if they've taken the time to share their information with us, they are expecting a follow-up. And initially we sort of said something like, thanks, you'll be hearing from us soon. And then some people would write back to say like, when is that going to be? Or I haven't heard anything yet or something. So we adjusted the response to say, you will be hearing back from someone by phone or email within the next 2 to 3 business days. So it sort of helps frame those expectations. But then we work hard on the staff side too, to be like, okay, we shouldn't, we should follow up then within that time frame, because that's what we said we were going to do. And that builds a credibility. Our staff are also a key piece in that too, because they may tell clients like, go to Vera. And they are using Vera in their own work sometimes just to find out about our own programs and, cross-reference against the eligibility. So I think our staff have to also believe in the product.
Oh, that's a really important point. That they themselves are buying into it, but also how clients' expectations of a digital interaction means quicker expectations of a digital response after that as well, and how that can compare to your. I mean, I've dealt with this with organizations where most organizations don't tend to have a policy around turnaround time with responses, and then they start using WhatsApp, and people are like, I expect a 1-minute turnaround time from my message, and so it builds a whole other element of what you were talking about, John, around policies and procedures. And so I wonder, John, if you can speak to that a little bit in terms of what you're seeing in the ESL sector. Because one of the things that is different is there are longer term relationships that tend to happen in a language class. As Amy mentioned, sometimes it's one and done. They get what they need and they're gone and they move on. The quick information and referral kind of thing. In a longer term relationship, like a language class, where someone may literally be going through a program for years, certainly months, where can the tools be introduced and intersect, and where does that conversation, how is that conversation potentially different in terms of trust and in terms of literacy and things like that?
Well, I think firstly, the range of policy development seems to be nobody's there yet. The early one that was really, really exciting, I was really excited about, was York University. They put out some guidance and documents, and it seems to be followed up like that. Now, a lot of institutions will put out, so it's not a policy, but these are things to consider. So they're not committed to that yet. I really do believe, I just did an event in Manitoba, and I felt from them that they're waiting for the institution to tell them how to behave with this technology. I know not all instructors are like that, but that seems to be what I'm picking up recently from that. I also think on the development side, sort of creeping back to the previous question, you were talking about the chatbot, right? Like, and collecting information and, guarding the security. So in our project, it's still early days yet. We've been developing for a while, but we were looking at the chatbot, open chatbot idea. We've kind of like paused it, like super paused it. And what we're doing now is we're exploring an alternative called Mixer, Mixxer. And it's really an amazing tool because it's open source. And we talked to the author, and he's provided us the code. and we're actually going to ingest it into our new tool and test it out first. So instead of folks talking to a chatbot, we have a better alternative. Well, they'll be having language partners from different parts of the world. However, that brings up a whole other series of issues, like if some people get on there and they just want to treat it as a dating service kind of thing, how are we going to police that? It's a big thing, right? There's every time we want to put something else into the LMS that's innovative or newish, there's with technology, there's all sorts of issues you've got to consider. So in that case, we've stepped away from AI and tried to go for a more human solution. I'm not sure if I answered your question though.
You did, yeah. And I mean, part of it is part of the question is also about like in an environment where you have kind of a captive audience, and Wasim, yours is sort of similar. You're working with people perhaps for a longer period of time going through that AI tool. Does that give you an opportunity to kind of walk them through some of the issues of being more comfortable with AI and understanding the possibilities of AI?
Absolutely. So there's two aspects there. There is in specific sectors, it's not that mature. Mainly in the health sector, sometimes they ask questions that it's need validation, and as we mentioned that in those sectors we need to provide a valid answers, and we listed that those answers are not related to those. It should be a general answers just to prepare you to meet an expert and to ask those questions. So it's more like general questions and behavioral questions maybe. And the other side, we were, let's say, feeling about how those clients, mainly the refugees who are not here in Canada yet, are hesitant to ask those questions, to show their weakness in some areas of how should I ask that? Why the interviewer will ask me about these questions, about difficulties or how to deal with conflict. So in those could be a cultural, let's say, cultural behavior. And cultural answers, and sometimes they will not be open to discuss or to show those answers. So those tools could give them a way to practice and to understand why this would be helpful and how to answer that. So it's really a helpful way in those areas.
Great, thank you. And John, there's another question in the chat I want to ask you. You previously talked about the amount of human work involved in administering AI, keeping it up to date, and of course, developing it. And this actually can be for all of you, but we'll start with John. I'm wondering if developing these tools is expected to change how program leaders are doing their work. And how can we support their development to be able to do their work?
Well, sorry, Marco. This is a big one. As like right now, I've just swapped. I'm a teacher mentor, but I'm also right now because of this new phase of development. I've just been a developer for about say 12 months now, and it's kind of like we're discovering as we go, and that the ethics and all of that are being roughed out, and a lot of times we're doing things, and I'm thinking like, oh, geez. That's not right, right? And then when you push it out there, like I put out in blog posts, people come back and say, well, that's not very ethical, making books out of using AI or teaching. I did one series of things where I showed teachers 5 ways to make their daily task easier. And one of them was have it write your emails and write the replies to the emails and all that kind of stuff. And I got some personal emails saying, that's very unethical. How dare you? And I agree. But I'm actually approaching this as a technician, really not thinking about the greater picture sometimes, right? So now I've got to figure that out by myself. Oh, sorry. What was the original question?
No, that's okay. I just want to add, and then I'll go back to the original question because I think that's really interesting. From the social work field, this is the importance of the diversity of the teams working on this, right? Because now you've shifted your head into technician mode, but you need an ethicist, you need an ESL teacher there, for example. And social workers have said, no technology team is complete without a social worker on side. to maintain the focus on ethics, you know, the privacy, all of the things being newcomer centric, for example. But the original question, is looking at how are our program leaders expected to be able to develop these tools? How will their work change, and how can they be supported in that sort of new role, if you will?
Oh, it's got to be, well, it's got to be funding. I mean, this stuff doesn't make itself. You know, you can't, it's just like when the H5P came out about 7 years ago now. When it came out, I thought, oh, this is amazing. Teachers can do this. They will do this. You know, fairies will come out and make us beautiful ice creams every day. But it doesn't happen. This stuff really does take a lot of work. If you want a final product that's going to be vetted by CLB professionals or PBLA professionals, it's gotta be done. So I don't know. They have to allocate budget.
But that's also important. We must maintain the current standards of practice that we expect people to have, right? And that means, as you said, as a technician, you can't walk through the technology veil, forget everything you know how to do before, and assume you're just a tech bro now, so you can forget about ethics, you can forget about users, you can forget about diversity, all those kinds of things. So that's also, I think, something I'm hearing from you. And Wasim, you're nodding, so go ahead.
Actually, I will maybe throw a few approach that we tried to do so. First of all, we do workshops a lot, mainly between our program managers and technology providers or tech people. Those workshops are really necessary to understand the technology and understand what's our work and what we are looking for as an outcomes. The other thing is that most likely that we need educational partner, or let's say consultation partner, to come within the planning phase. And this can be a pro bono, let's say some of the consultation who provide those NGOs with a free consultation or free hours. So they could help us also to approach or evaluate those tools. And it's really important because we are not the expert to evaluate those technologies. It's very embedded and new technologies, emerged technologies, and we need help. And there's no shame to ask for this help from those subject matter experts. The third one is actually we tried also to be involved in some of hackathons and some of those projects to test those technologies based on our program case. And we put some of the projects that we want to test it either with fresh graduated students, with organizations, with other NGOs. So it's really, that will give us an opportunity to understand what the technology is in this aspect.
But I think that's a really important point. We will need to bring in people who are subject matter experts, but you are the overall subject matter expert. And so we can't be led by the technology. We must be led by the reason we're doing something, the ethics, values, and mission of our organizations in our sector, and make sure that that gets embedded into these efforts, basically.
Absolutely.
Which is great. Amy, anything to add?
I've sort of said it a few times. I'm so blessed, honestly, to work with a full team. This is something that I think Access has done really well, and continues to build out is within program proposals. We're not only thinking of these types of digital leader roles as admin, but rather building portions of positions into the program budgets as well, because we know that the programs will also benefit from having access to the digital tools and to expertise and to people who can, modify the Salesforce system so that they can collect their information better from their clients and automate data entry and whatnot. So sort of seeing these as critical pieces to the success of our programs.
Great, thank you. We don't have any more questions from the audience. And Stein, unless you have a question, I'm going to invite our panelists to ask each other any questions they might have, a curiosity from what you've heard from each other before we sign off.
Yeah, I have a question for Wasim. Oh, sorry, did you say that to Stein?
No, I said it, unless you guys don't have anything to say, I'm going to let Stein jump in. But yeah, go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, I was so impressed with what you guys were able to build in-house, and particularly how like responsive it is. So it's really listening to your responses, and I guess it must be sort of doing a, you know, sound to text translation, and then very quickly searching, its knowledge database and pulling up a response. I think it's interesting that you guys have, at least in the example that you showed us, it seemed to be mostly around like building interview skills. Are there other topics that you guys have started exploring?
We are checking now with some vendors about specific consultant per job. For example, people who are coming from the tech background. So it's more as a interview mock rather than a preparation. And also we are also evaluating a language training, AI trainers, let's say, mainly to detect any kind of, mainly in this language speaking and enhancing the conversation skills.
Awesome. Now, all three of you are actually tech innovators in the field. We talk a lot in the sector about what can you buy, what can you use off the shelf, but you've all actually been creating or are creating, John, something unique. So you're developers as well. We need more of that in our sector, I would suggest. So I wonder, when you think about what you're working on and what you've built, where's the social enterprise or the sharing part, or how can others eventually make use of the technologies that you're creating that are very specific and baked into our sector already? Or is that a plan for any of you? And if it isn't, it should be, of course. So don't, your operational plan has just got augmented. But I'm curious if that's a thought for any of you, because you're building in the sector, you're of the sector. So that's a no.
Oh, sorry. No, but I've made it a personal practice since I started in this zone. Everything I have is put on LinkedIn, like every article, links to blog posts, every project I've been on. And when I do something, I normally, I don't know where I get the time, but I make a how-to guide for every single thing that I do. And it's really, honestly, it's kind of a selfish thing because it helps me, because a lot of times I'll think, what the heck was I doing? How did I do that? And I'll go back to my SlideShare, or I'll go back to my Google Drive, or I'll go back to wherever it's shared, especially the Tesla Ontario blog post. I put everything under the articles. So it's really quick for me to go back, but I hope it's quick for folks to go out. The one thing that I find very time consuming is I'll go back, say, like to Google Earth. I just did a thing on Indigenous cultures in Google Earth. And then you got to go back 6 months later and try it out, and you go, oh my goodness, they've changed this, they've changed that. So you've got to change it, reconvert it, update, blah, blah, blah. It's actually something I just got into a habit of years ago.
Yeah, and so I just, we're out of time, but I want to encourage folks to think about, you're developing internally, but what that could mean for the sector eventually. Sharing what you're doing is definitely one thing, but the actual products you're developing could be something that could be really interesting, scaled across the organization. So I want to thank you all for your incredible presentations, insights, and sharing your thoughts and the work that you're doing. I want to thank everybody who joined us, and to let you know the recording will be available soon. I also want a special thanks to our session organizers. So Toronto Metropolitan University's Canada Excellence Research Chair in Migration and Integration, and the co-conveners for the last 2 days, the Neighborhood Organization and Jumpstart Refugee Talent. So thank you everybody for joining us, and we appreciate everything and everyone who's joined us, and we look forward to more conversations like this in the future.